A chill ran through me as I stare at my phone screen. Leave the house. Don't drink the wine. Across the elegant dining table, my parents' smiles never wavered, crystal glasses raised in anticipation. For 28 years, I'd been Emily Connolly, their perfect, obedient daughter. But as our housekeeper Greta slipped me a desperate warning note, and my father tilted his head with that calculating look I'd somehow never noticed before, a fractured memory surfaced. I wasn't Emily. I'd never been Emily. And the family watching me bring that wine to my lips wasn't waiting to celebrate. They were waiting to erase me. Again. The evening light spilled through the bay windows of my parents' countryside home, casting long shadows across the dining room table. Mom had always been particular about how she wanted things, but tonight, her 60th birthday, everything felt even more meticulously arranged than usual. The crystal glasses caught the light just so. The table settings were impeccable, perfect like a magazine spread. "Emily, honey, would you mind lighting the candles?" my mother asked, her voice melodic as always. Lizette Connolly, even at 60, moved with the grace of someone half her age. Her silvering blonde hair was pulled back in an elegant knot, her navy dress tailored to perfection. "Sure, Mom." I struck the match, watching the small flame dance before touching it to each wick. The candles were arranged in a specific pattern, one she'd insisted on. Everything tonight had meaning, she'd said. "Just how we used to have it for special occasions," my father Richard commented, entering with a bottle of wine so old the label had begun to fade. His tall frame and broad shoulders still commanded the room at 65, though his once dark hair had gone completely gray. He smiled at me, but something in his eyes seemed to be measuring my reaction. "I still can't believe you managed to get here from Seattle on such short notice," he continued, setting the wine down carefully. "I wouldn't miss Mom's birthday," I replied, smoothing down my dress. The truth was, I'd been surprised by the urgent tone of his call 3 days ago. "We really need you here, Emily. Your mother insists." Uncle Kellen arrived next, my father's younger brother, with a wrapped package and his trademark hearty laugh. "There's my favorite niece," he boomed, though the enthusiasm didn't quite reach his eyes. "Looking more like your mother every day." Something about that comment made my skin prickle. I'd always been told I took after my father's side. "Dinner is ready," announced Greta, our housekeeper of, well, as long as I could remember. Her German accent had faded over the years, but never disappeared completely. Tonight, she seemed tense, her usually warm smile strained as she carried in the first course. I counted the places at the table. 5 settings. Me, Mom, Dad, Uncle Kellen, and Greta, who'd always joined us for important occasions. But there should have been 6. There always used to be 6. No one mentioned Theo. My brother had vanished 5 years ago, just after his 25th birthday. A troubled soul, my parents called him. Wanderlust, they explained to friends. But they never explained to me why all his things disappeared overnight, or why they changed their phone numbers the same week. "This soup was your grandmother's recipe," my mother said, breaking into my thoughts. "I've added my own touch, of course." "And the main course is your favorite," my father added. "Remember how you used to beg for my roast duck when you'd come home from college?" I nodded, though I didn't actually remember that. Duck had never been my favorite, had it? The conversation flowed around me, carefully orchestrated topics about the garden, the neighbors, a trip my parents were planning to Portugal. Safe subjects. Nothing about the past. Nothing about Theo. "Emily, you've hardly touched your food," my mother noted as Greta cleared the first course plates. "Just savoring it," I lied, though something felt off about the flavors. Too strong, almost medicinal. As Greta reached for my plate, her hand brushed mine, and I felt something slip between my fingers. A small folded post-it note. I palmed it quickly, excusing myself to the bathroom. Once alone, I unfolded the yellow paper. "Don't drink." The handwriting was shaky, desperate. I stared at it, confusion rising. Was Greta warning me about something? I'd known her my entire life. She'd bandaged my scraped knees, taught me to bake cookies, helped me pack for college. Why would she? I shook my head. It was probably nothing. Maybe the wine was stronger than usual, Or she thought I was on medication. Still, when I returned to the table, I watched Greta more carefully. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but kept glancing at my untouched wine glass. Now, my father announced, rising to his feet as dessert was served, I think it's time for a toast to the birthday girl. He raised his glass. Lizette, my love, 60 years have only made you more magnificent. Uncle Kellen raised his glass next. To my stunning sister-in-law, your grace and strength continue to inspire us all. They both looked at me expectantly. My glass was full. I noticed theirs were barely filled, just enough for a symbolic sip. To Mom, I said, lifting my glass but not bringing it to my lips. 60 never looked so good. I noticed a flash of something cross my mother's face. Disappointment? Suspicion? You're not drinking, dear? She asked, her voice light but insistent. In a minute, I said. I just want to say a few more things first. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something instinct, perhaps, made me pull it out. Unknown number. Get out of the house.
Now.
Don't drink the wine. I nearly dropped the phone. The same warning as Greta's note, but more urgent, more specific. My heart began to pound. Something wrong, sweetheart? My father tilted his head, his smile unwavering, but his eyes had hardened. No, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. Just work. They never leave me alone. Well, they can wait, my mother said firmly. This is family time. I nodded, slipping the phone back into my pocket. My fingers trembled. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not with them. These were my parents. This was my childhood home. And yet, I need to use the restroom again, I mumbled, standing so quickly my chair nearly toppled. This time I locked the bathroom door, leaning against it as I checked my phone again. A second message had arrived. You're not who you think you are, and they know you're starting to remember. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, searching for, what? Signs that I wasn't myself? My hazel eyes, my father's straight nose, my mother's high cheekbones. I'd always been told I was the perfect blend of them both. But as I looked closer, a strange memory surfaced, a recurring dream I'd had since childhood. Sitting at a table, just like tonight, but with different people. Warm faces. Laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. And someone holding my hand under the table, a small hand, like a child's. The memory faded as quickly as it had come, leaving me disoriented. What was happening to me? When I returned to the dining room, everyone was waiting, their faces carefully composed. Everything all right? Uncle Kellen asked.
Fine, elite.
Just a headache starting. We have medication for that, my mother said quickly. I'm fine, I insisted, taking my seat. My father stood again, raising his glass. To family, he said, his eyes fixed on mine. And to memories, those we cherish and those we leave behind. Everyone watched me, waiting. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Just as my father began to frown, a hard knock sounded at the front door. Who could that be? My mother asked, her voice sharp with irritation. The knocking came again, more insistent. I'll get it, Uncle Kellen offered, but my father shook his head. No, I'll go. He set his glass down carefully and strode to the door. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my untouched wine glinting blood red in the candlelight. Voices drifted in from the entryway, my father's low and controlled, another woman's firm and official. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was tense. My mother's fingers drummed against the tablecloth, her expression carefully blank. A moment later, my father returned with a uniformed police officer, a woman in her mid-30s with short auburn hair and alert brown eyes. Her badge read, Deputy Wolf. I apologize for the interruption, she said, scanning each of our faces. I'm Deputy Clara Wolf. We received a call about this address, something about a poison drink. The room went silent. My heart hammered against my ribs. That's absurd. My mother laughed, but the sound was brittle. We're just celebrating my birthday. Perhaps one of the neighbors is playing a prank. Or someone is bored, my father added smoothly. We haven't had any trouble here, Deputy. Clara's eyes found mine. Are you okay, miss? I'm fine, I said, but my voice cracked on the second word. From the corner of my eye, I saw Greta quietly slip out of the room. Her usual purse, always hanging on the hook by the kitchen door, was missing. I understand this seems intrusive, Clara continued, but we have to investigate all calls of this nature. My father spread his hands in a gesture of openness. You're welcome to search the house if you want. We have nothing to hide. His tone was accommodating, but there was a quiet threat beneath the words, the same tone he'd used with my high school principal when the man had suggested I needed counseling after a panic attack. Thank you, sir. I'll just have a quick look around if you don't mind. Of course. Emily, why don't you show Deputy Wolf around? She'll see everything is perfectly normal. It wasn't a suggestion. I stood on shaky legs and led Clara into the hallway. Once we were out of earshot, she turned to me. Are you really okay? You seem nervous. I hesitated, then whispered. I got a message. Someone warned me not to drink the wine. Her expression shifted subtly. From who? I don't know. Unknown number. And our housekeeper. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted us. Through the side window, I saw Greta's old sedan speeding down the driveway. Clara frowned. Is she leaving? She lives in the guest house, I said. She's not supposed to be. A noise from the kitchen cut me off. We hurried toward it, finding the back door swinging open. Clara stepped outside, hand on her holster, and I followed. Greta was running from the garage, sobbing. When she saw me, she grabbed my arm with surprising strength. You have to leave, she gasped, her accent thicker with emotion. They're not your parents. I stared at her, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. What are you talking about? Of course they're my parents. Clara stepped between us. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Greta shook her head, frantically. You don't understand. I've worked for them for 25 years. I know what they've done. Who's done? Clara asked. The Canellis. Richard and Lizette. They. That's enough. My father's voice boomed from the doorway. He stood there, Uncle Kellen behind him, both men rigid with tension. Clara turned, placing herself between us and them. Sir, I need to speak with this woman. Greta is unwell, my father said flatly. She's been having episodes lately. We've been concerned. She seems concerned for your daughter's safety, Clara countered. My father's smile was cold. Paranoid delusions. We've been trying to get her help. I'm not delusional. Greta cried. Emily, please, you have to remember. Think about the dreams you used to have. Think about why Theo really left. Uncle Kellen stepped forward. Greta, that's enough. You're upsetting everyone. Clara studied each face carefully. We've had calls about this address before, she said slowly. But the records are odd. Files missing. Reports incomplete. My father's expression darkened. That's enough, Clara. You've overstayed. We're trying to have a family dinner. The use of her first name caught me off guard. Did they know each other? I think I should take your daughter and the housekeeper with me, Clara said evenly. Just to sort this out. My father's laugh was dismissive. Don't be ridiculous. Emily isn't going anywhere. She just arrived home. This isn't her home, Greta insisted, her voice breaking. She doesn't belong here. She never did. The confusion and fear that had been building all evening crystallized into something harder. I pulled away from Greta, looking between her tear-streaked face and my father's controlled anger. What do you mean, this isn't my home? I demanded. Emily, she's confused, my mother said, appearing behind my father. Greta, we've tolerated your eccentricities for years, but this is beyond acceptable. What were you going to put in her wine tonight? Greta shot back. The same thing you gave her before her college graduation? Before her engagement ended? Every time she starts to remember, a cold feeling spread through my chest. My engagement to David had ended abruptly 3 years ago, after a weekend visit home. I couldn't remember our final conversation, just waking up in my old bedroom, confused and disoriented, with my mother telling me he'd left in the night after a terrible argument. I think we should continue this at the station, Clara said firmly. That won't be necessary, my father replied. Deputy, I think you should leave now. We'll handle Greta's episode privately. Clara didn't move. I'd be neglecting my duty if I left now. Your duty? My father laughed, but his eyes were hard. I know your supervisor quite well, Clara. One call and… Dad, stop, I interrupted. Something wasn't right. This wasn't the father I knew, this cold, threatening man. I want to hear what Greta has to say. Emily, my mother began, but Uncle Kellen cut her off. Richard, Lizette, maybe we should take this inside. The neighbors might hear. My father stared at me for a long moment, then nodded curtly.
Fine.
Inside. All of us. As we moved toward the house, Clara fell in step beside me. Whatever happens, she murmured, don't let them separate us. The words sent a chill down my spine. What was happening in my perfect family home? Sleep wouldn't come that night. The evening had ended in a stalemate. Clara refusing to leave, my parents refusing to let me go. Uncle Kellen had played mediator, suggesting everyone sleep on it. Clara had finally departed with a warning that she'd return in the morning, and with the quiet assurance to me that she'd have someone watching the house. Greta had been escorted to the guest house by my father and uncle. Her tearful pleas still echoed in my mind. You have to remember, Emily. You have to try. My childhood bedroom felt both familiar and strange. The lavender walls, the white furniture, the bookshelf filled with novels I'd loved as a teenager. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, certain details nagged at me. The photos on the wall, me at various ages with my parents, with Theo, had always been there. But now, looking closer, something seemed off about them. In one, taken supposedly on my 10th birthday, my eyes looked different, darker than their usual hazel. The smile didn't reach them. Unable to sleep, I rose and began examining each photo carefully. In some, I looked completely natural. In others, there was something subtly wrong. The angle of my shoulders, the way I held my hands, even the shape of my face in certain shadows. A memory surfaced, my mother insisting on professional portraits every year, but only for me. Theo had been photographed only in casual family snapshots.
Theo.
My chest tightened. Where was he now? What had really happened 5 years ago? I opened my laptop and tried searching for him online, as I had countless times before. Theodore Connolly. No results that matched him. It was as if he'd never existed outside this house. Moving quietly, I crept down the hallway to my parents' bedroom. Their door was closed, no light visible underneath. I continued to my mother's study, where she kept family documents. The door creaked slightly as I opened it. I froze, listening for any sound from my parents' room, but the house remained silent. Inside the study, I switched on a small desk lamp and began carefully searching through drawers. In the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet, beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found a burned birth certificate. The fire had consumed most of it, but I could make out part of a name, an Ev, and a birth date, Yuli 1994. My birth date was August 1994, not July. And my name was Emily, not what?
June?
Beneath it was a letter addressed to June, the handwriting unfamiliar. Most of it was too water-damaged to read, but one line stood out. Miss you every day. Whatever they tell you. The rest was illegible. A folder labeled with my name contained medical reports. Emily Connolly, but from a hospital in Anchorage, Alaska. We'd never lived in Alaska. I'd been born in Boston. Or so I'd always been told. My hands trembled as I replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. What did it all mean? Back in my room, I nearly screamed when I saw a figure sitting on my bed. It was Greta, a finger pressed to her lips. How did you get in here? I whispered. I've worked in this house for 25 years. I know every creaky floorboard. Her voice was calm now, her earlier hysteria replaced by grim determination. We don't have much time. They'll check on you soon. Check on me? I'm 28 years old. That hasn't stopped them before. She patted the bed beside her. Sit, please. I need to tell you everything while I can. I hesitated, then sat. Tell me what? The truth. She took a deep breath. You're not their daughter. You never were. Your real name is June Everly, and you were brought here when you were 4 years old, after a fire at a private facility in Alaska. A cold sensation spread through my chest. That's insane. Is it? Haven't you always felt something was wrong? Haven't you had dreams you couldn't explain? Memories that don't quite fit. The recurring dream flashed through my mind again, sitting at a table with different faces, a small hand holding mine. Even if that were true, I said slowly, why? Why would they take someone else's child? Because you saw something they needed to hide. Greta's eyes filled with tears. And because Lizette couldn't have children of her own. But Theo wasn't their son either. Or your brother. Her voice broke. He was my son. I stared at her, disbelief warring with a strange sense that I'd always known this somehow. Your son? But that's... When I came to work here, he was 2. I'd fled an abusive husband in Germany, was desperate for work. They offered me this job, housing, protection. They said Theo could be part of the family. Her hands twisted in her lap. I didn't know then what they were doing. By the time I figured it out, it was too late. What were they doing? The facility where they found you, it wasn't a normal place. It was for experiments. Behavioral modification. They called it therapy, but it was much worse. She looked away. Richard and Lizette were researchers there, not doctors like they claimed. My head was spinning. This is crazy. If any of this were true, why didn't you tell someone? Why stay here for 25 years? I tried to leave once, when Theo was 10. They threatened to report me for an immigration violation, said I'd never see him again. Her voice hardened. And every time I tried to tell you the truth, they'd notice. You'd ask questions, start having dreams. Then they'd drug you, and you'd forget again. Drug me? With what? Wine, usually. Sometimes your migraine medicine. Once they took you to a therapist for 6 months. You came back different. I remember that time, my sophomore year of college.
I'd had a breakdown, they said.
Needed specialized help. The 6 months were a blur. You screamed for days when they first brought you here, Greta continued. You kept asking for your real parents. Then suddenly you stopped. Called them mom and dad. Started talking about memories you'd never had. That's not possible. Look at your right shoulder, she said softly. I pulled down my pajama top, revealing a 3-inch scar near my collarbone. They told you that came from a swing accident when you were 6, Greta said. But you already had it when you arrived. It's from the fire that killed your real parents. My fingers traced the raised skin. I'd always been told I'd fallen from a tree swing, caught my shoulder on a broken branch. The memory was so clear. The swing, the fall, my father carrying me to the car, my mother pressing a towel against the bleeding. But was it real? Or implanted somehow? The wine tonight, Greta said urgently. It's laced with a sedative that suppresses memory. The same thing they've given you every time you've come home since you left for college. Every time you start to remember, they bring you back and make you forget again. Why now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Why tell me this now after all these years? Because they're getting desperate. You're having dreams again, aren't you? Flashes of memory?
They know.
That's why they insisted you come for Lizette's birthday. Her eyes filled with tears. And because I think Theo might still be alive. A soft knock at the bedroom door made us both jump. Clara's voice came through. Emily? It's me. Greta quickly opened the door. Clara slipped inside, still in uniform. I thought you left, I said. I did. Officially. She glanced at Greta. You told her? Greta nodded. You two know each other? I asked. We've met before, Clara said grimly. I used to know Theo. We were close. When he disappeared, I tried to investigate, but the case kept getting reassigned. Evidence went missing. She hesitated. I've been watching your parents for years, waiting for a chance to find the truth. About Theo? About all of it. The facility in Alaska. The children who passed through there. The ones who disappeared. She looked at me intently. Including you, June Everly. The name sent a strange jolt through me, like Hearing a song I'd forgotten I knew. I can't. I press my hands to my temples. If what you're saying is true, then my whole life has been a lie. Not your whole life, Greta said gently. Just your understanding of it. Clara moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. We need to be careful. Your father has connections in the department. That's why I came back unofficially. What about Theo? I asked. You said he might be alive? Greta and Clara exchanged looks. There's something you need to see first, Clara said. Something that might help you remember. She led us downstairs, moving silently through the darkened house. At the back door, she paused, listening for any sound from my parents' room. Hearing nothing, she ushered us outside. The night air was cool against my skin as we crossed the garden to the old well, a relic from when the property had been a working farm a century ago. It had been sealed for as long as I could remember, covered with a heavy wooden lid. Clara and Greta worked together to slide the cover aside. Clara shone her flashlight down into the darkness, then reached inside, feeling along the stone wall until she found what she was looking for, a small crevice. From it, she extracted a metal lockbox, covered in dirt and rust. Theo showed me this hiding place, she explained. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should look here. The lock was old and gave way easily when Clara applied pressure. Inside was a child's drawing, yellowed with age. 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. It was signed in crayon. June and me. Le Tao. On the back, written in a child's uneven hand. She remembered once before. They made her forget. Please protect her next time. I stared at the drawing, a wave of nausea washing over me. The small stick figure had hazel dots for eyes. The taller one had blue. Blue like Theo's. Blue like mine had been, in that strange photograph I'd examined earlier. I don't understand, I whispered, though part of me was beginning to. You weren't brother and sister, Clara said softly. You were both taken, both forced to forget who you really were. But Theo remembered. And he tried to help you remember too. Is that why he disappeared? I asked, my voice breaking. Greta nodded, tears streaming down her face. He said he'd found proof about the facility, about what happened there. He was going to expose everything. She swallowed hard. The night before he vanished, I overheard Richard on the phone. He said, the problem needs to be permanently solved this time. Clara's expression hardened. I think they moved him, hid him somewhere. The records of Theodore Connolly were altered just 6 months ago. Someone using his social security number applied for a fishing license in Oregon. He's alive. Hope surged through me. I think so. And I think he's trying to find you. Clara closed the lockbox. But first, we need to make sure you're safe. If your parents realize what we know. A light flicked on in the house, the kitchen. Through the window, I could see my father, phone in hand, pacing. We need to go, Clara said urgently. Now. As we turned to flee, a beam of light swept across the garden from the second floor, Uncle Kellen's room. He was awake too. June, Greta whispered, using the name that still felt foreign to me. Whatever happens, remember who you are now. Don't let them make you forget again. The name echoed in my mind as we ran through the darkness, away from the house that had never truly been my home.
June.
My name is June. The drive into town was tense, each of us lost in our thoughts as Clara's patrol car ate up the miles between the Connolly estate and civilization. Dawn was just beginning to lighten the sky, casting everything in a surreal blue glow. I sat in the back seat, clutching Theo's drawing like a lifeline, my mind spinning with fragments of memories that didn't feel like my own. Where are we going? I finally asked as Clara turned onto a residential street lined with modest bungalows. Somewhere safe, she replied, checking her mirrors for what must have been the 20th time. Someone who might have answers. We pulled up in front of a pale yellow house with a meticulously maintained garden. Despite the early hour, lights shone from within. She's expecting us, Clara explained, helping Greta from the car. The older woman looked exhausted, the night's events etched in the deep lines around her eyes. A silver-haired woman opened the door before we reached it. She was in her 80s, with bright, alert eyes behind thick glasses and the ramrod-straight posture of someone used to commanding attention. "You must be the girl," she said, her gaze fixing on me with unsettling intensity. "Come in, quickly." Inside, the house was cluttered but clean, every surface covered with books, photographs, and newspaper clippings. The woman led us to a kitchen table already set with steaming mugs of coffee. "Emily, this is Mrs. Halvorson," Clara said. "She used to run youth records for the county before she retired. She's been helping me look into cases like yours." Mrs. Halvorson settled into a chair, still studying me. "The moment I saw you, I knew," she said. "You're the Connolly girl, the one who disappeared in '98. I shook my head. "I didn't disappear. I've been with the Connellis my whole life." "No," she said firmly. "Not you. The real Emily Connolly. She vanished when she was 3. Never found." She pushed a faded newspaper clipping across the table. The headline read, "Local child still missing after 3 months." Below it was a photo of a small blonde girl with striking blue eyes, the same eyes I'd seen in those strange photographs in my room. The eyes that weren't mine. "I don't understand," I whispered, though a part of me was beginning to. Mrs. Halvorson pulled out a thick folder. "Your real name is June Everly. Born July 12, 1994, to Margaret and Daniel Everly of Anchorage, Alaska." She slid a birth certificate across the table, intact, unlike the burned one I'd found in my mother's drawer. "You were presumed dead after a fire at a private children's facility called Pinewood Haven in 1998. My fingers traced the document, touching the name that still felt foreign, yet somehow right. June Everly. Not Emily Connolly. "The facility," Clara prompted. "Tell her about that." Mrs. Halvorson's expression darkened. Pinewood Haven was officially a residential treatment center for troubled children. In reality, it was something much worse. She adjusted her glasses. It was run by a couple using the names Dr. Marcus and Dr. Elizabeth Shaw. "Lizette and Richard," Greta supplied quietly.
"Yes."
"Though I doubt those are their real names either." Mrs. Halvorson rifled through her papers. They specialized in what they called memory restructuring, supposedly helping traumatized children forget painful experiences. Her mouth twisted. What they were really doing was experimenting with memory manipulation techniques. "But why?" I asked. "What was the point?" "Money, initially. Government contracts. Private clients who wanted certain problems forgotten." She sighed. "Then the fire happened. 4 children died. Or so the official report stated. The facility was destroyed, the Shaws disappeared, and the investigation was mysteriously shut down." Clara leaned forward. "And then the Connellis appeared here, with a traumatized 4-year-old girl they claimed was their daughter, who'd been staying with relatives." "No one questioned it?" I asked. "Small town. Wealthy, charming couple. Forged papers." Mrs. Halvorson shrugged. "And you believed it too? Whatever they did to you at that facility, it worked? You truly thought you were Emily Connolly?" The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. "So my real parents died in the fire, according to reports." Mrs. Halvorson's voice gentled. "Though given everything else we know, I'm not sure we can trust that." Greta reached across to squeeze my hand. "Every time you started to remember, having dreams, asking questions, they would find a way to sedate you, reset you." "With the wine," I murmured. "And other things," Greta confirmed. "Pills they called migraine medicine. Therapy sessions that weren't really therapy." "I remember the headaches," I said slowly. "After college breaks. After visiting home. They'd start suddenly, and Mom, Lizette, always had the same medication ready." "And afterward?" Clara prompted. "How did you feel?"
"Foggy."
"Like I'd lost time." A chill ran through me. There was one summer after sophomore year when I came home for just a weekend. I woke up, and it was 6 weeks later. They said I'd had a nervous breakdown. Mrs. Halvorson nodded grimly. "That's their pattern. Every time you got too close to the truth, they'd reset you. Make you forget again." But why keep me at all? If I was a liability, why not just? I couldn't finish the thought. Lizette couldn't have children, Greta explained, her voice flat. She wanted a daughter. And you were compliant. After what they did to you at the facility, you were the perfect subject. The perfect daughter. And Theo? I asked. Was he from the facility too? Greta's eyes filled with tears.
No.
He was my son. When I came to work for them, he was just a toddler. They said he could be part of the family. I didn't understand what that meant until it was too late.
They used him, Clara said.
As a control mechanism for both of you. To keep Greta in line, and to reinforce your false memories of growing up with a brother. But Theo remembered. Greta continued. As he got older, he started asking questions. Finding inconsistencies. He discovered old records in Richard's office about the facility, about other children. When he confronted them, Clara picked up, they tried to use the same techniques on him. But he was older, more resistant. That's when he started leaving me messages, I realized. The drawing in the well. Mrs. Halvorson pushed another document toward me, a death certificate. According to this, Theo Miller died in a boating accident 5 years ago. Body never recovered. But we know that's not true, Clara said firmly. Someone used his social security number 6 months ago in Oregon. Applied for a fishing license under the name Thomas Miller. You think he's hiding? I asked, hope rising in my chest. I think he escaped, Greta said. And I think he's been trying to find a way to help you ever since. Mrs. Halvorson gathered her papers with a determined expression. There's more. The facility in Alaska wasn't the only one. There were others, operating under different names. Children who went in and came out changed. Parents who suddenly stopped looking for missing children. She fixed me with a penetrating stare. You and Theo aren't the only victims. Just the only ones we know about who might still be alive. The weight of it all crashed down on me. Not just my life, but others, children who'd been experimented on, families torn apart. We need to go public, I said. Expose everything. It's not that simple, Clara cautioned. Richard and Lizette Connolly have powerful connections. The records of the facility fire were sealed by a federal judge. Every time I've tried to officially investigate, I've hit walls. We need proof, Mrs. Halvorson agreed. Hard evidence of what they did. To you, to Theo, to the others. And we need to find Theo, Greta added, her voice breaking. If he's alive, he'll be in danger too. Clara checked her watch. By now, they know you're gone. They'll be looking for you. Let them look, I said, a new resolve hardening within me. I'm not hiding anymore. It's time they answered for what they've done. As if in response to my words, Clara's phone buzzed. Her expression darkened as she read the message. What is it? I asked. They've reported you missing, she said grimly. And they're claiming Greta kidnapped you during a psychotic break. They're trying to control the narrative, Mrs. Halvorson observed. Discredit you before you can speak out. Then we need to move fast, I said, standing. Before they can silence us again. The others looked at me with varying degrees of concern and admiration. In that moment, I felt more like June Everly than I ever had, a woman determined to reclaim her stolen life and expose the truth, no matter the cost. Clara's living room had become our war room, walls covered with timelines, photographs, and maps. 3 days had passed since our escape from the Connolly estate. 3 days of diving into old records, making calls to former employees of Pinewood Haven, and trying to piece together the fragments of my true history. We need more, Clara said, frustration evident in her voice as she pinned another dead end to the board. Everything we have is circumstantial. Your memories, Greta's testimony, old newspaper clippings. None of it will stand up in court. What about my medical records? I asked. The ones from Alaska? Falsified, Mrs. Halvorson replied, not looking up from her laptop. I've been comparing them to what we found in Lizette's office. They altered dates, changed names, created an entire medical history that never happened. I paced the small room, restless energy coursing through me. Since stopping the drugged wine and migraine medicine, my mind had felt clearer than it had in years. Memories were surfacing, fragmented, disjointed, but real. The facility in Alaska. A room with blue walls. A woman with kind eyes who wasn't Lizette. We need to get them to incriminate themselves, I said suddenly. On record. Greta looked up sharply. You can't go back there. Not alone, I agreed. But what if I did go back? One final dinner. With Clara undercover and all of us wearing wires? Clara frowned. It's risky. If they suspect anything. They won't, I insisted. They'll be so relieved I came back that they'll let their guard down. They always do. It's the pattern. I question things, I leave, I come back, they drug me. Everything returns to normal. Except this time, you'll be ready, Mrs. Halvorson said slowly, warming to the idea. I'll go in wired, I continued. Act like I'm confused, scared. Like I just want to come home. They'll think Greta's story freaked me out, but didn't fully convince me. Clara considered this. We'd need backup. Officers I trust completely, not anyone who might be connected to your father. I can make some calls, Mrs. Halvorson offered. I still have friends in the FBI. This crosses state lines, the facility in Alaska, the victims transported across the country. We need to move quickly, Greta warned, before they realize we're building a case. 2 days later, the plan was set. I stood in Clara's bathroom, staring at my reflection as she attached a small microphone to the inside of my blouse. Remember, she said, you just need to get them talking. Don't confront them directly about the facility or the other children. Just express doubts, confusion. Let them try to reassure you. I nodded, stomach churning with anxiety. What if they try to drug me again? Switch glasses when they're not looking, she instructed. And if you can't, just pretend to drink. The important thing is to keep them talking. The drive back to the estate felt surreal. As we approached the familiar gates, I took a deep breath, centering myself in my new reality. I was June Everly. I had been stolen, manipulated, lied to. And tonight, I would begin to reclaim my life. My father, Richard, opened the door before I could knock, relief washing over his face. Emily, he breathed. Thank God. We've been so worried. I allowed him to pull me into a hug, fighting the urge to pull away.
I'm sorry, he whispered.
I was confused, scared. Of course you were, my mother, Lizette said, appearing behind him. Greta filled your head with those awful stories. Come inside, Richard urged. You look exhausted. Are you hungry? Greta's replacement made your favorite pasta. I let them usher me in, noting how carefully they both watched me, assessing my state of mind. Uncle Kellen appeared in the living room doorway, his expression guarded. The prodigal daughter returns, he remarked. Kellen, Lizette chided. Not now. Dinner was served in the same formal dining room where this had all begun just days ago. Everything looked identical, the crystal glasses, the fine china, the candles arranged in that peculiar pattern. But now I understood their purpose. Not decoration, but ritual. A routine designed to trigger subconscious compliance. I'm sorry I ran off like that, I said, pushing food around my plate. The things Greta said, they seemed so real in the moment. She's unwell, Richard said smoothly. Has been for years. We've tried to get her help. We should have told you, Lizette added, reaching for my hand. But we didn't want to worry you. Told me what? I prompted. About her delusions. The stories she makes up. Richard sighed heavily. It started after her son died. The poor woman couldn't accept it. Started creating elaborate fantasies. Her son. I kept my voice carefully neutral. Yes, a troubled boy. Drowned years ago. She never recovered. Lizette's voice was sympathetic, but her eyes were cold. She became obsessed with the idea that he was still alive, that someone had taken him. And now she's fixated on you, Richard concluded, projecting her delusions. It's quite sad, really. I nodded slowly, as if considering their explanation. I guess that makes sense. Some of what she said was pretty far-fetched. Relief flickered across both their faces. Exactly, Lizette agreed eagerly. All that nonsense about facilities and experiments.
Pure fantasy.
Although, I said carefully. Some things she mentioned did make me wonder. Like why I don't remember much from before I was 4. Or why my eyes look different in some of the old photos. A tension crept into the room. Richard reached for the wine bottle. You are very young. No one remembers much from that age. And photos can be deceptive, lighting angles. True, I conceded. And I guess the medication for my migraines could explain the memory gaps later on. Your migraines? Lizette latched onto the subject. Have you had any since you've been gone? Actually, no. I replied truthfully. Not a single one. Something flickered in her eyes, calculation. Well, that's wonderful. But you should still take your medicine preventatively. You know how suddenly they can come on. Richard poured wine into my glass. A toast? To family reunions. I smiled, raising my glass. To family. As they turned to clink glasses with each other, I quickly switched mine with Lizette's nearly empty one. When they looked back, I took a small pretend sip, careful not to let the liquid touch my lips. Delicious, I commented. Special vintage? Very special, Richard confirmed, watching me intently. From a private reserve. The meal continued, each of them carefully steering the conversation away from dangerous topics. Theo, my childhood, the strange texts I'd received. I played along, gradually appearing more relaxed, more compliant, occasionally pretending to sip the drugged wine. After dessert, I made a show of yawning.
I'm sorry. I'm exhausted.
Would you mind if I turned in early? Of course not, sweetheart, Lizette said, rising quickly. I'll come up with you. Actually, I countered. I think I need a few minutes alone first. To process everything. A flicker of concern passed between them, but Richard nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. In my bedroom, I closed the door and whispered into the hidden microphone, confirming I was alone. Then I carefully rearranged the pillows under my blanket to look like a sleeping form and silently opened the window. Clara had positioned herself beneath it, ready to help me implement the next phase of our plan. Back inside the house, I crept to the top of the stairs, listening. Richard and Lizette were in the study, voices low but audible. Too lucid, Lizette was saying. The dose should have started working by now. She might not have drunk enough, Richard replied. Or she's built up a tolerance. We can't risk it. If she remembers. She won't, he cut in. We'll move her tonight, just like we did when she was 15. The cabin is prepared. And if she resists? She won't be in any condition to resist. I've prepared a stronger solution. We'll say she had another breakdown, needed specialized care. My blood ran cold at the casual way they discussed drugging me, imprisoning me. I recorded a few more minutes of their conversation, capturing damning admissions about previous treatments and their plans for me now. Just after midnight, I enacted the final phase. Pretending to be groggy from the wine, I staggered down to the kitchen for water. As expected, Richard appeared almost immediately. Having trouble sleeping? He asked, his voice gentle but eyes calculating. I mumbled. Feeling weird. Dizzy. Let me help you back to bed, he offered, taking my arm. I let my legs give way, slumping against him. Don't feel right. It's okay, sweetheart, he soothed, half carrying me back upstairs.
Just the wine.
You'll feel better soon. Once in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, eyes half closed, watching as he pulled a syringe from his pocket. This will help you sleep, he said, approaching. Before he could reach me, the bedroom door burst open. Clara stood there, badge raised, gun drawn. Richard Connolly, you're under arrest, she announced. Step away from her. Now. The look of shock on his face was almost worth everything I'd endured. As more officers flooded the room, I sat up, completely alert. You, he hissed, realization dawning. You were faking. Not everything, I replied, as an officer cuffed him. Just the part where I believed anything you ever told me. The arrest of Richard and Lizette Connolly made national headlines. Renowned psychiatrists charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, screamed one. Memory manipulation, the dark truth of Pinewood Haven, declared another. But the headline that affected me most deeply was the simplest. June Everly, found at last. In the weeks that followed, the investigation expanded exponentially. FBI agents combed through decades of records, interviewed former employees of the facilities, exhumed cold cases of missing children. Uncle Kellen, whose real name turned out to be Kevin Lawson, cut a deal, turning state's evidence against the Canellis in exchange for leniency. Greta testified too, her voice strong despite the tears that sometimes overwhelmed her. She detailed 25 years of manipulation, threats, and the constant fear that had become her life. When asked why she'd finally spoken up, her answer was simple: because I couldn't bear to watch another child disappear. The preliminary hearing was brutal. Richard and Lizette, or Marcus and Elizabeth Shaw, as they were originally known, sat stone-faced as the prosecution laid out their crimes. The evidence was overwhelming: falsified records, testimony from former colleagues, financial paper trails linking them to other facilities across the country. And then there was the phone. The one Richard had been carrying the night of the arrest. On it, a draft message to an unknown number, subject E showing resistance to treatment. Implementing Protocol 7 tonight. My testimony was scheduled for the third day. As I took the stand, I felt surprisingly calm. The person I had been, Emily Connolly, seemed like a character in a half-remembered dream. I was June Everly now, reclaiming my name and my story with each word I spoke. The prosecution was gentle but thorough, walking me through my fragmented memories of the facility, the fire, the years of manipulation. The defense tried to paint me as unstable, confused, susceptible to suggestion. But the evidence supported every claim, every recovered memory. When I stepped down from the witness stand, Clara was waiting, a strange expression on her face. "What is it?" I asked. "We found something," she said. "A voicemail. On Theo's old phone." My heart leaped. From who? From him. Left just 12 hours before we arrested the Canellis. My hands trembled as she handed me the phone. I pressed play, holding my breath. "June, if you get this." The voice was deeper than I remembered, rougher, but unmistakably Theo's. "I knew you'd remember. I'm not far. Just follow the stream behind the house." Tears blurred my vision. "He's alive? You're sure?" Clara nodded. "We think so. We're organizing a search team tomorrow morning. The stream behind the Connolly estate leads to a nature preserve. There are caves, old hunting cabins." "I want to be there," I insisted. "I figured you might say that," she smiled. Greta too. Dawn broke clear and cool the next day as the search teams assembled. Dogs, officers, volunteers, all spreading out along the stream that wound through the woods behind what I now thought of as the Connolly prison, not the Connolly home. Greta and I stayed close together, following Clara and 2 other deputies. The forest was alive with birdsong, sunlight filtering through the canopy of leaves. It was beautiful, peaceful, hard to imagine anyone hiding here in fear. The stream forks up ahead. One of the deputies called back. "We'll take the East Branch." We followed the western fork, the water growing shallow and rocky. After nearly 2 hours of searching, one of the dogs began to bark excitedly, pulling its handler toward a dense thicket of brambles. "There's something here," the handler called. "Some kind of structure." As we drew closer, I could make out the outline of a small cabin, so overgrown with vegetation it was nearly invisible from more than a few feet away. The windows were boarded from the inside, the door secured with a heavy chain. Clara approached cautiously, gun drawn. "Police. Anyone inside?" Silence. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a sound, movement. "Theo." Greta called, her voice breaking. "Theo, it's Mom." More movement. A scraping sound. Then a hoarse voice. "Mom?" The officers moved quickly, bolt cutters making short work of the chain. As the door swung open, a thin figure emerged, blinking in the sunlight, a man in his early 30s, with a wild beard and haunted blue eyes. Eyes I recognized from a child's drawing signed "Love, Theo." Greta rushed forward with a cry, enveloping him in her arms. He clung to her, sobbing, his body frail, but his grip fierce. When he finally looked up, his eyes found mine. Recognition flickered, then blazed. "June," he whispered. "You remembered." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I knew you would," he continued, his voice stronger. "I knew if I could just get you away from them, away from the drugs." "You sent the text," I realized. "From the burner phone they found in the cabin." He nodded. "I've been watching the house for months, waiting for a chance." "But how did you escape?" Clara asked. "Everyone thought you were dead." A bitter smile crossed his face. "That was their mistake. They thought the drugs had worked on me like they did on June. But I was older when they started, more resistant." His expression darkened. "The night they came for me, I was ready. I fought back, managed to get away, let them think I drowned. For 5 years." Greta whispered, anguished. "Why didn't you come to me?" "I couldn't risk it," he said gently. "Not until I had proof. They were watching you, using you to get to me, to June." He looked at me again. "I had to find evidence first, something that would stand up in court." "And did you?" Clara asked. He nodded, gesturing back toward the cabin. "Everything. Records they thought they destroyed. Names of other children. Recordings." His voice hardened. "Enough to bury them forever." The aftermath unfolded like scenes from someone else's life. Theo and I were placed in protective custody while the prosecution built their case. The evidence he'd gathered over 5 years of hiding, combined with what we'd recorded the night of the arrest, was devastating. Other victims came forward, their stories horrifyingly similar to mine. Childhood stolen, memories manipulated, identities erased. Greta testified again, this time with Theo beside her. The sight of them together, mother and son reunited after years of forced separation, moved even the most hardened journalists to tears. 3 months after the arrests, Richard and Lizette Connolly were formally charged under their real names, Dr. Marcus and Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, linked to the disappearances of at least 4 other children besides me. "What happens now?" I asked Clara one evening, as we sat on the porch of the small house I now shared with Theo and Greta. "After the trial, after all of this is over?" "That depends on you," she replied. "You're June Everly again. You can do whatever you want." I considered this. In the months since my escape, I'd begun the slow process of reconstructing my identity, not the false one I'd been given, nor the one that had been taken from me, but something new. Something of my own choosing. "I think I'll keep using Connolly, actually," I said. "In public, at least." Clara looked surprised. "Why?" "Protection," I explained. "There are still people out there connected to the facilities. People who might want to silence us." I stared out at the darkening sky. "Let them look for June Everly. They won't find her." "Smart," she acknowledged. "And afterward? When it's truly safe." I smiled. "Then I'll be whoever I want to be." That night, I woke suddenly at 2:15 a.m., the exact time the text had come through on that fateful evening. It had become a pattern, this midnight awakening, as if my body had set an alarm to commemorate the moment my life changed forever. I reached for my phone, opening the Messages app. I'd never deleted that first warning. "Get out of the house.
Now."
Don't drink the wine." I'd read it so many times the words had been seared into my memory. But now I added a new message, sending it to the same unknown number. "Thank you for saving my life. I'm safe now. We both are." I didn't expect a response. The number had been deactivated months ago. But sending the message felt important, an acknowledgement of how far I'd come, of the journey from Emily to June, from prisoner to survivor. As I set the phone down, I caught sight of my reflection in the window glass. For a moment, I saw both of us there, Emily with her carefully constructed memories, and June with her hard-won truth. Not separate people, but parts of the same whole. Both real, both mine. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, therapy sessions, depositions, the ongoing process of reclaiming fragments of a past I was still piecing together. But for tonight, in this quiet moment between my old life and my new one, I finally felt complete. I was June Everly. I had been lost, and now I was found. And no one would ever make me forget again. What would you do if your entire identity was built on someone else's lies? If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for more psychological thrillers that will make you question everything you thought you knew.